This is live on the shadow side of leading. It's a big topic. It's what we're seeing out in the world today. We see all sorts of shadow sides being played out. And of course, we're seeing a lot of disownership around it, denial around it, a disconnect around it. But we're not only seeing it being demonstrated out in leadership, we're also seeing it in our homes and in ourselves, in our sort of family constellation, as well as our, friendship dynamics. So what is that, the shadow side of leading, and how does it affect your life? How does it affect not only you personally, but of course those you're close with? And also the shadow side of leading shows up in the organization, and the organization can end up having a shadow organization. Yeah, that part where there's that sort of mistrust about the organization. And I'm sure every one of you watching has an organization that comes to mind. There you go. You don't really trust them. They're not transparent. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the shadow side of leading. And in essence, really what we're talking about is we're talking about areas of power and disempower, as well as the misuse of power, which is big, because when you step into leading, there's something that is presupposed with it. There's something that comes with it, which people don't always aware of, which is when you're standing in that sort of a place of authority, the expert, people can consciously and unconsciously project on you. Now, they can project on you like a negative connotation. They can also project on you that you have something that they don't. And when that starts to happen, and they then have this sort of, role in your life or at your work, and they become the dominant figure and leading the way. If they have a shadow side that's unresolved, that can then, of course, affect how they lead you and how they misguide you, and how that sort of shows up in many different ways. And I want to talk a little bit about it, because it can really be toxic when a leader is not willing to take accountability for their shadow side. So let's define a little bit, what is the shadow side of leading? And then, of course, we want to talk about what is the other side of that, and find your place and where you are on the scale between shadow and being in your sort of natural light, where it's not having to be in front of somebody and, pushing somebody aside in order to be in your natural light. Yeah. And naturally leading without having to compromise another, for example. Yeah? So I want to talk a little bit about that, especially about power. And first I want to say Carl Jung, who's famous in the world of therapy, and that's part of my background. I come from a therapeutic background, as well as leadership. I do leader trainings all around the globe for many years, and I've been supporting individuals and teams, groups, and organizations to stepping into their own, empowerment, which of course is the direction we all want to go, and the direction we also want to support and help others to step into. Carl Jung does a lot of work around the shadow in our humanness. And he was one of the first people to really write about it, journal about it. And there's a lot of literature that he's created on the shadow work. So if you really are interested in this particular topic and you want to dive deeper, please check out Carl Jung. You only need to, put the word shadow next to his name, and you'll see some amazing content there for you to read. So what does it look like when we're in the shadow side? What are some of the things that show up when we're not in our authenticity? Well, of course, it's inauthentic. Yeah, that's the first thing. We're inauthentic. But the shadow side can also be in leading, and not only in leading, it permeates through our life. Yeah, we don't just sort of cut off from that role and go into another role when we see our family. And if we do, then we have, of course, that split part within us and a very disowned part within us. And that's another aspect to how we cut off from our shadow and then become maybe a pleaser to the partner. And that happens. It does happen, believe it or not. You can get the really big boss who's bossy to everyone, but the moment he goes home or she goes home to the partner, they become submissive or courteous, or, a completely different role comes up. And that is just a split from their shadow, not really owning it in the work environment, but it still exists. It's still part of their personality structure. And we all have the shadow. Let's just be very clear. We all have that part within us where we, feel envious or jealous or insecure, or we have our own little routine behaviors of how we sort of self-loathe, or are hard on ourselves, or I'm not good enough, I'm never going to be good enough, or we compare ourselves to another. So there's that aspect to where the shadow can kind of live and grow. And when it gets a little bit of like in the leading role, it can become dominating, or it can become controlling, and it can become really toxic to people in the environment. And it can also be very subtle in how it plays out. For example, shadow side of leading can also play out where you start to manipulate people, but not maybe overtly. You can be deceptive about it. You can get people to play against people, which is really, of course, poor behavior. Yeah, we don't want that in a leader, but it happens all the time, especially in politics. We're not going to mention any names, but that's really a big place, a big platform of where the shadow side of leading gets played out. But we're not immune to it in our own homes and in our own social environments. We see who's the sort of alpha, and we see if the alpha is in integrity or out of integrity. And we feel it. We feel when we can trust that individual or not. Yeah. Another way that the shadow side shows up, it can be, diminishing. It can put people down. If you're in the shadow and you're in this sort of dominating leader, my way, not interested in taking feedback from another, not interested in owning and having accountability for their mistakes. How beautiful would it be if we start seeing leaders own their mistakes? Oh gosh, I screwed up. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah, that was my mistake. Yeah. And then you just see them sort of lead by, by example. But what we often see is some leaders, not all leaders, not walking their talk. And you know it when someone's kind of preaching one thing, but doing another thing on the side. It doesn't feel good. It feels icky. It feels inauthentic. It feels deceptive. You feel like you're being lied to. It's dishonest. And we have, sadly, a lot of what can be attributed with the shadow side is the people who really want to get to the top. And what's often connected with the misuse of power, well, those people at the top, when they misuse their power, because now they're in the position of the authority. And they can easily become an authoritarian because people start wanting, to please them. It's a natural behavior that we have in our human existence, like it or not. Yeah, there's a behavior that kind of gets set up, unspoken contracts around who's the leader and how we start to follow that individual. Even if you're rebellious against that individual, you're still trying to make your way somewhere in the organization, or whatever it is you want from that person. And if you find out who the leader is, often is the case, you will do something in order to get that, what it is you want. Now, the leader can see this, and if they aren't clean and authentic, they can misuse their power in this. They can do it in, overstepping boundaries. A leader can use their charms in, getting individuals in, and we've seen it in so many places, in getting sex from staff and employees, and not only men, but women as well, where they misuse their power. And we also see in how they sort of corrupt different, parts of, teams and individuals together, because they then divide and they control. And sadly, this is happening all the time. They can be competitive, because to get to that place, often implicit in getting to that leadership place, especially in a very sort of masculine dominated, work environment, there almost needs to be a competitive side in you. Like you're almost willing to push your way in, and it can be really nasty, like a doggy dog kind of environment, which isn't really feeling clean, doesn't really feel safe, doesn't really feel like your nervous system can relax with that kind of leadership, where you feel like you can have these sort of trust-based relationships, let alone a trust-based culture. Forget about that. People are looking over their shoulders, people are mistrustful, suspicious, and competitive, trying to always work out and strategize. But that doesn't really create the kind of leadership we ultimately want today and need today, because we need leadership of people who are willing to be authentic and encouraging and inspiring. So that's where we start to see the divide. When people start to recognize, wow, I'm the person in power. And when they recognize they're the person in power and all these people are coming to them going, what do you need? What do you want? What do you need? What can I do? How can I help? After a while, if they don't stay really with integrity within themselves, they can misuse that power. And of course, it can be very disruptive, destructive. Yeah, it can bring a company, you can mislead a whole organization based on how you lead, which is why it's so important to start to watch your behavior as you develop yourself into a leading. And if you're already leading and you're watching this, how do you lead? How do you recognize yourself as a leader? Can you recognize yourself in that clean area where you keep things really transparent, clean with your communication, honest, real, authentic? Or do you have, little strategies and how you sort of play the field and how you sort of manipulate the field? And it's not for you to say to me, it's more you being honest with yourself. That's the key, number one. It's a bit challenging if we have a narcissistic leader, because often the narcissistic leader, see me, see me, see me, doesn't often even know that they have the narcissism. So it's really hard for them to see their blind spots. Oh, wow, I did that. Oh, wow, I'm really sorry. I had no idea I did that. Yeah. Or it's really hard for them to recognize mistakes, or when they, criticize somebody that they did something, it's really challenging for them that they have that. So it can be an extra sort of layer when I work with leaders, because I do leadership trainings. When I work with them, I can see where people get kind of stuck in their way of leading. And of course, they want to break that behavior, break that pattern, and that's why they're there, so that they can develop themselves outside of that sort of old construct that has been so well attuned to, There's the other things we have, the imposter syndrome. That's one people know. There's the entitled leader. That's another one where people start to feel like they're righteous and entitled. And that's, again, it's just another toxic behavior. And that often shows up in decision making when you're in board meetings or you're collaborating with others or team meetings, and you just have to have your way. And there's no will or there's no willingness to open up to others. And I call this a very rigid, narrow-minded thinking kind of leader who's probably deep down scared of something, scared of losing something. And maybe if they were to do what I call your inner homework, they would discover actually what the fear is nothing to do with the step that the organization or the team is wanting to take. And this is actually a beautiful quote from Marshall Rosenberg. And he says, and he was the one who created NVC, he says, every criticism, judgment, diagnosis, and expression of anger is a tragic expression of an unmet need. And I say that because often when you see even leaders, because leaders were once not leaders. Leaders were once actually little innocent beings, believe it or not. And we know some tragic leaders today. And yet they have that, or at least I have that understanding that underneath that behavior, on that old behavioral pattern, the top-down leader and my way, there's something under there that's unmet in them. And if that leader is even close to willing to listen and be open to hearing feedback, even a minutia or micro feedback, you can slowly create an access point that will allow the communications to open between you and that leader, so that you can maybe make a shift and a change in how that individual leads. But if you're considering leading for yourself, which I'm hoping, because we need more authentic leaders on the planet today, big time, then I would highly recommend start to observe your leadership edge. So let's talk about that a little bit. What are we looking at? We're looking at, if you recognize that you have some of the the shadow side of leading. And by the way, we all do. We all have a longing to be seen. It's a very natural thing. Even if you're someone who says, no, 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 I like to be in the background, don't bother with me. There is something in there from the moment you're born and your mother or father held you and looked at you. There's that natural wiring of wanting to be seen, because there's in essence, it's to do with, recognition, that somebody sees you. It's like you're in form. Your body is there, you're present, you're on planet Earth, someone sees you. So it is kind of wired in us in a very natural way, the healthy way. So that longing to be seen. But if you're someone who notices that longing to be seen was never met growing up as a child, and because mother or father were busy, or for many other reasons in the environment, you might have it playing out in your adult life where you're still trying to be seen, and you're trying to get approval from other people, which is a typical thing we all do, and then that can show up in a sort of negative behavior of where you catch yourself in all sorts of mechanisms that actually don't really serve your true self, only serve a self that's been very polished and masked to the world. And we see that on Instagram today. And, that shadow side of leading, if you start to recognize those behaviors in you, those tendencies in you, you want to catch them. You really want to catch them, because that's where the edge is that I was talking about, that I want to talk more about, where you become, maybe you notice you're demanding or controlling or dominating or disrespectful or degrading or diminishing or dishonest or manipulative or, deceiving or not taking accountability. Not respecting people's boundaries. That's a big one, of course. Not walking your talk, or you're competitive, but in a sort of brutal way, or you're not understanding or forgiving, or you undermine people. And by the way, that's terrible. There's leaders who will shame people at a meeting, or, put people down, or take credit for your task. For their employees' tasks, they take the credit for it, if you're someone who recognizes these things, then especially, and also imposter syndrome and entitlement and righteousness and judging and criticism, if you see that, it's okay. These are sort of negative attributes that we have in our humanness, and it can happen. We can pick these up along the way in our conditioning. We're not making them wrong, but more likely want to be aware of them so that they don't run your life, not only in where you might lead your life, but also in how you relate with others in your personal relationships and your professional relationships. You want to try to be as clean as possible. Otherwise, you'll find yourself having really sort of superficial friendships that are based on an artificial self versus a true self, where you can really be open, honest, real, and authentic with individuals. And that is a wonderful way to lead. Why? Because then other people feel inspired to do the same in your leadership. They want to be around you. They want to come work for you. You become magnanimous. They gravitate to you. So how do we discover that edge? Well, one of the things, as I said before, is to watch your patterns, to watch your communication. That's a big one. Is your communication meeting the person where they're at, or is it above them? Is it telling them, or is it asking them? Is your communication supporting connection, or supporting disconnection my way, or the highway kind of languaging? Look at your behaviors and your reactions to how you're particularly leading with others. And if you're seeing, you're getting defensive, or you start to see these triggers acting out, as I've listed before, then I would watch where those triggers are in the behaviors and where you want to go in order to protect yourself, so that you can find new ways of leading. It's not always easy because it takes time. We're breaking some old cycle of behavior because some people are really scared to lose their position in how they do their thing, or they're scared that people won't respect them if they're not authoritative enough, and so on. But I have seen time and time again in my work, and myself included, that when we shift our way of leading to a heart-led leading, for example, where it's not just head, led, but heart-led, it changes the mindset to a heart set, and it really transforms how you communicate and how you lead others. So what would we be seeing if we start to navigate from this place and lead from this place? We would be seeing, of course, honesty. We will be seeing humbleness, which is beautiful. When we see leaders were humble, we would see leaders taking accountability and owning their stuff, going, yeah, I screwed up. That's right. You're absolutely right. Let's relook at this again, or let's figure this out together, or I will go back to the drawing board and get back to you because I can see, I messed up. Yeah. So there's that ownership, which creates such a lovely feeling because you feel that the leader's approachable, accessible, and reachable. And for me to have a leader like that means you can have enjoyment with the leader. You actually enjoy going to work because you've got a leader that you really appreciate and respect, because they respect you and they appreciate you. They're generous. Yeah. And some of the things that are really important for me when I'm leading is that it's, I want to inspire people to empower themselves. So my languaging is really towards how can I empower individuals? So I'm not going to tell people what to do. I'm going to ask them so that they can choose. That creates choice and that empowers people. Yes, I have choice. Yeah. And that's important because already they start to go, oh, she's asking me. Yeah. As opposed to telling me. And it already sets a particular tone in how you lead others. People feel it. Yeah. Another big one I have, which is inclusivity. And because I work with teams of people, and especially in particular therapeutic environments, if I play favorites with 2 or 3 people, but I sort of negate others, they will feel excluded. And we all have felt that feeling of what it feels not included. It's not a nice feeling. So as I take the responsibility as a leader, another good, attribute, I also take the responsibility to be inclusive. So I'm really including everyone in it. If we're having meetings, I make sure everyone's engaged, everyone feels included, everyone feels like they can participate. And that again creates a certain level of empowerment. Yeah, she didn't forget about me. She included me. She cares what I have to say. I matter. Yeah, these things really have an effect on the environment that you're leading in. Yeah, whether it's 2 people or 20 people, howsoever. Yeah. Another one, of course, is taking responsibility and leading by example, walking your talk. I call that the new sexy. When you see leaders really walking their talk, it's like, it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Wow, I want what they've got, because they're really embodying these qualities, not just speaking about them, they're embodying them, and you feel it. Yeah. And remember, we're sentient beings, so we feel things. Things are feelable, whether we cognitively always get it or not. We get the sensations of it and we get the feeling of it. I also, I like to encourage, things like playfulness, lightness, joyfulness. That also breaks the spell of I'm your leader and this is the way it has to be, and that sort of old paradigm, and creates a little bit of breathing room and oxygen for people to be themselves, to be their natural selves. And that allows a little bit of playfulness, that allows a little bit of lightness. And we all need that in the day, because many of you have a lot going on in your life. Yeah. And to go to work and have somebody who's leading you in that way, that allows you to include, not only include team, but include aspects of who you are, your truth, what's really happening for you. And that's a beautiful part of where we want to allow in our leading, because people then start to feel that you're really authentic and you're really transparent and you're really honest with them. Other things like compassion. Of course, compassion, comes when we learn how to be self-compassionate. The more we can be self-compassionate, gentle with ourselves, the more we can be compassionate with others and gentle with others. So that's an important, in my opinion, attribute to leading, because people want to feel that you're compassionate, people want to feel that you're listening. And another, of course, big key is that you're present. And, that's another one of those old things that many of you maybe not had growing up, where you missed having someone be really present for you and really available for you and there for you. So presence naturally gives you that feeling of, oh, wow, they're really there for me. They're really listening. They really seem to care, and it's good. Because the more presence we offer as leaders, the more people want to show up. the more people want to deliver, the more people want to show up in themselves, as well. And all of this, by the way, how you lead, of course, it permeates every aspect of your team, and affects productivity naturally, because people get excited. They feel more alive in the space when they feel they can be themselves. Not that they have to adjust themselves or compartmentalize themselves, that they can be themselves, because this leader is also being honest, real, and authentic with them. Yeah. So I'm going to check that we're good on time. I've gone a bit over time, but I just wanted to say that, the shadow side is, for me, just a telltale sign of something that's not working undercurrent in your life. And it's just an indicator of what's not resolved. And it doesn't mean that we can't step into the other aspects of these qualities that are way more suited for leading, the kind of leadership we want today, and the kind of individual we want to be in ourselves as well. Yeah. So I want to thank you all for leading. And just to say, if you're interested in going a step further into this work, we're doing a course, and you're more than welcome to come to the course. It's also all about leading. So we go even further and we dig deeper, and I have an opportunity to work directly with you. And hopefully I get to meet some of you in that course. And I think the link is going to be somewhere around this video. So maybe see some of you there. Thank you guys for watching.